Hokage give me a face. Conan, Chapter 41-60. Chapter 41-Poisoned Bride. Yizan looked at number 18 feet's powerless panting, and a satisfied smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It seems that my combat power is still as strong as ever. Yizan looked at number 18 with a grin and said so. Quote. Number 18 glanced at Yizan, but he didn't dare to say anything more. There was no way. Yizan just let number 18 know what a husband is bigger than the sky, and he was taught a lot by Yizan's stick, miserable. Yizan also let out a long sigh of relief, feeling comfortable all over. Husband, I just don't know, how will you pretend to be a pig and eat a tiger in the future? Number 18 looked at Yizan with a smile. Well, in fact, there are many ways for Yizan to continue pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger. Whether it is in the world of Hokage or the world of One Piece, there are countless ways. However, number 18 is very familiar with Yizan. Generally speaking, Yizan rarely changes his appearance. This time, number 18 can be sure that Yizan will never change his appearance because of this trivial matter. Sure enough, Yi Xuanfeng said calmly, isn't that just not pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger? Yizan said casually, what a big deal, my hobby is pretending to be forceful. Yizan said, grinned, looked at number 18 and said, wait, soon, I'll let you know what real pretending is. Okay. Number 18 looked at Yizan in surprise. As time goes by, a flower on the other side landed in front of Yizan again. Okay, there is a case. Yizan said to number 18. 18, who had been waiting for this opportunity, jumped up and came to Yizan's side. Where to? Go to the crime scene. Go. 18, who was about to leave directly, wait. Yizan said, and soon he put on a pair of glasses. The glasses are of course flat mirrors, that is, flat glasses lenses, purely decorative. What are you doing? Number 18 looked at Yizan strangely. The wisdom of mortals, I don't know this. Yizan put his eyes together in a pretentious manner, and said to number 18, it's very simple, just for 2 words, pretentious. No. 18 looked at Yizan in amazement. Okay, number 18 admitted that this is indeed a bit of a cool pretense. Seeing this, Yizan was very satisfied with the effect, and walked away with number 18 with a smile. Soon, Yizan and the 18th came to the outside of a wedding. So many police cars. So, things have already happened. Yizan said slowly. And it didn't take long for Yizan to say this. Officer Miu Miu quickly rushed out with a flower from the other side. As soon as Officer Miu Miu rushed out, he saw Yizan and number 18 standing outside. You actually came here. It's a rich detective. Following Miu Miu's words, many people saw Yizan, and this time, many people recognized Yizan. Yizan pretended to hold his eyes and said, what's wrong? To Yizan, the wedding hasn't happened yet. But the bride at the wedding was deliberately poisoned. Deliberately poisoning, Yizan said as he slowly stepped into the wedding scene. I just observed it casually and collected the necessary clues. Yizan started to pretend. It's really the wisdom of mortals, you can't see such a simple thing. Yizan pretended to sit on the sofa and looked at everyone around him. This case is very simple. Everyone looked at Yizan in surprise. Very easy. Everyone looked around again, and then swept through all the clues Yizan had experienced before. However, everyone still said that they and others really didn't know who the murderer was. Is it really the wisdom of mortals? For the first time, everyone had this idea in their hearts. Well, it looks like you really haven't found anything. Yizan pretended to force his glasses and said, then, I'll tell you guys how the murderer committed the crime. Yizan quickly used the capsule to create an illusion for everyone, and told everyone the real killing method. No, look at the videotape. Yizan said, and after a while, he paused. Do you see it? Yizan's words made the police officer Miu Miu stunned for a moment, and said in surprise, label. Yizan nodded. Not bad. Yizan looked at the crowd and said, at this point, there are not many suspects left, and the murderer is the groom of this wedding. Yi Xuanyu said astonishingly. What? Impossible. Everyone was shocked and questioned Yizan's words. When Yizan saw this, he gave everyone a big thumbs up in his heart. It was amazing, and it was the best slap in the face. This hand was so wonderful. Then, the container for the poison. A smile appeared on Yizan's mouth. Okay, no more talking. The groom suddenly shouted, it's me. With the shouting of the groom, a sad old story slowly emerged in front of everyone. And Yizan shook his head slightly. Mortal. Humans are always like this. Selfish, ignorant. Yizan said slowly, looking at the remorse of the groom because he knew the outcome of the matter. He shook his head slightly. Tell you good news and bad news. The good news is that although the poison is deadly, it shouldn't cause too many problems, and the bride should be able to survive. 1.8. Yizan's words made everyone look at Yizan in surprise. Really? Yizan waved his hand and said, however, the bad news is, after this incident, the ending of the newlyweds. Yizan shook his head. So, mortals. Yizan said, facing number 18 beside him. Okay, number 18, let's go, there is nothing to see here. Hearing the words on the 18th, he quickly came to Yizan's side and left with Yizan, without knowing the reason. At the last moment on the 18th, he turned his head to look at the crowd and showed a thrilling smile. Really, it's so fun. Two people fall in love and kill each other, he. Speaking on the 18th, he jumped up to catch up with Yizan, leaving the crowd watching Yizan and the people who left on the 18th in shock. Chapter 42-Secretary's Death. After a series of things, Yizan returned to the villa, ready to enjoy a leisurely day. After all, people will be tired after running around for a long time. Even if the body is not tired, the mind should relax. Well, Yizan just wanted to be lazy. Lying casually on the deck chair of the swimming pool, holding a glass of orange juice, bathed in the fresh sunshine, suddenly felt that the world is still very beautiful. Well, if there is no other side flower that floats down from the sky. Guru. Yizan took a mouthful of orange juice and let out a sigh. The protagonist is really not something that ordinary people can do. I've been taking a break from my busy schedule for a long time, but troublesome things have come to my door. Yizan looked at the other side flower that fell from the sky, and said with some annoyance. And when Yizan said this, the number 18 wearing a bikini emerged from the swimming pool, like a mermaid, and looked at Yizan. Pretty, what's the matter? Yizan flipped a Byakugan and pointed to the sky. In the sky, a white flower on the other side slowly fell. Ah! No, 18 smiled recklessly, and the two groups of pure white shook out a dazzling wave. Haha 30, it's so fun, hubby, are you shooting yourself in the foot? Number 18 looked at Yizan and said, if the protagonist who solves the trouble is solved, then the trouble will fall on you. Crack. Yizan didn't know when he had come behind number 18. Dare to tease your husband, let's see how I can revive Fu Gang. Husband, this is still outside. Number 18 looked at Yizan tenderly. Don't worry, no one can see it. Yizan was very sure of this. After all, when he built his mansion, he had considered the possibility of such a daytime declaration. Time goes by. No one has the blessing to see these shameful things. After a while, number 18 lay softly on Yizan's body, stretched out a palm as soft as jade, touched Yizan's heart, and said with a smile, what do I do next? Continue like this. Yizan nodded. Go ahead. Conan sighed. There are some different situations. Conan's parents seem to be using the method left by the marshals to help Conan change his fate. I don't think I can do these things. How long? Yizan's words made number 18 smile. Then congratulations to my husband. Yizan looked at the falling white flowers on the other side of the sky, and pursed the corners of his mouth tightly. But, now, I still need to deal with these troublesome things. No, 18 said lazily. Then go, I want a good rest. Yizan looked at number 18 feet's lazy appearance, and patted number 18 feet's tightly wrapped ass, causing number 18 feet's body to twist. Then I'll go first, Yizan said, and left his mansion with a helpless face. Sure enough, not long after Yizan left, Yizan received a call. Hey, it's Officer Mumu. Okay, I'll be there soon. Following Yizan's words, it didn't take long for Yizan to arrive at his destination. This is a company. When Yizan's car just stopped. Yizan, you are here. Yizan, what's the matter with this case? As soon as Yizan got off the car, various reporters immediately surrounded Yizan and asked Yizan. Yizan ignored the questions from many reporters and went directly to the crime scene. The deceased is the secretary of the designer of this company, Mei Shang. Officer Mumu said to Yizan quickly. Yizan, on the other hand, put his gaze on a woman present. She is Hideko Toya, a famous designer in the clothing industry, and the person who died this time is her secretary. Officer Mumu said to Yizan. Yizan glanced at Tou Yingzi, a strange smile cracked at the corner of his mouth, sniffed his nose, evoked a strange smile, and then said to Officer Mumu, look at her, don't let her go, even if you go to the toilet, there must be a policewoman with you. Yizan said, and quickly came to the scene of the crime. Oh, interesting. Yizan glanced at the elevator. The body of the deceased fell from the elevator to the outside, but his face was facing upwards. Officer Mumu said to Yizan, this is what I am suspicious of. It stands to reason that those Zhaoyan are the murderers, but their bodies are facing me. I always felt something was wrong, so I asked you to come and take a look. Quote. Yeah, Yizan nodded and quickly began to look around. Okay, I already know the basics. Yizan said to the police officer Mumu, if the murderer, it should be Tou Yingzi. Well, Yizan cheated again. When Yizan first entered the company, he smelled the peculiar smell in the bag in Eiko Toya's hand, so he locked his eyes on Eiko Toya. Inferring the modus operandi from the results is naturally a very simple matter. Did you notice it very early? Officer Mumu asked Yizan as he looked at him. After all, Yizan had already instructed himself to let himself and others watch the householder Yingzi 460. It was just speculation before, but now it's almost certain. Yizan said to Officer Mumu. This made the police officer Mumu really completely surprised. Some people there didn't even know the case. They found the suspect just by meeting each other. Yizan looked at the surprised appearance of the police officer Mumu, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. What? It feels incredible. Inspector Mumu nodded. Yizan waved his hand. Actually, some things will show clues very early. Yizan said, looking at the surprised police officer Mumu, and said slowly, for example, in this case, Tou Yingzi is a famous designer in the clothing industry, but do you know a piece of clothing that appeared a few days ago? What happened? The clothes she designed were first published by other manufacturers. There are only a handful of people who can do this. The most suspicious of them is the secretary who is close to the body. Therefore, the leak of the design plan is very big. It may be her secretary's actions, and these things are really not a big problem in the law. If you delay a little, the law will not be able to punish them. Therefore, she clearly knows that her secretary stole business secrets for profit. Selling but helpless, under the anger, killing people is naturally normal. Chapter 43-Haunted House. Yizan's words were clear and slow, and the clear order surprised Officer Mumu. But, even so, you can't be so sure that Tou Yingzi is the murderer. Officer Mumu said to Yizan. Yizan waved his hand. This is only one aspect of it, and there are some remaining aspects. Adding up, the murderer can basically be confirmed. As a policeman, you still need to collect some information. It will be very useful for you to solve the case. Quote. Yizan said, and came to the hall with police officer Mumu. Okay, next, just check the bag in Toya Eiko's hand. Yizan said, and left without looking back. Ah, are you so sure? Officer Miu Miu was extremely surprised by Yizan's behavior. As a trendsetter in the fashion world, there is definitely a reason for carrying such a rustic bag, and even if it is all packed with money, Eiko Toya won't be so nervous about this bag, right? Her hands are so tight holding such a bag tightly, the contents inside are either extremely precious or shameful. Quote. Yizan said that he had already left the company. Behind him, the police officer Mumu had also opened Tu Yingzi's bag, and everything was as Yizan expected. It's really incredible. Officer Miu Miu looked at all this in surprise, unable to believe his eyes. After many reporters had no way to contain Yizan, they all came to Officer Mumu's side again, and began to interview Officer Mumu, but no matter which question or reporter, they would not leave Yizan in 3 words. And the police officer Miu Miu also told many reporters about Yizan's behavior. For a time, everyone once again confirmed the terribleness of Yizan's divine detective. While Yizan was bored, he came to Suzuki Sonoko's house again. Who? Yizan showed a slight breath, and a ghostly figure appeared directly in front of Yizan. Teacher. Suzuki Yuanzi quickly bowed his head and said, "Hello, teacher." Yizan waved his hand, watched Suzuki Sonoko's illusory body slowly solidify, nodded and said, "Yes, I can basically start my apprenticeship. Today, I will take you to complete the last thing." Yizan's words made Suzuki Sonoko look at Yizan in surprise. Really? Yizan nodded. "Well, after this matter is done, you can leave the apprenticeship." Yizan's words made Suzuki Sonoko quickly say, "Then I can know the face of the teacher, and then, in bed with the teacher." Yizan was stunned by Suzuki Sonoko's words, and instantly recalled that he had indeed said that he wanted Suzuki Sonoko to serve him. Hee. Yizan smiled strangely in his heart, and under the silver-white mask, there was a smile that men knew. "This matter, wait until you have finished the last thing," Yizan said, and took Suzuki Sonoko to the outside of a luxurious house. The house looks extremely dilapidated, but in some places the luxury and comfort of the past can still be seen. This is it. Suzuki Sonoko's eyes widened in shock. Haunted house. This haunted house is nothing else. It was when Yizan first came to this world that the mansion was taken away, and after doing a series of things, it became a haunted house. However, now it has become another venue. After the marshal's death, compared to some fruits, it can be picked. Yizan thought to himself. Yes, this haunted mansion is now the gathering place for everyone who killed the marshals. Because those people find that in this haunted house, the effect of plundering fate is better. Okay, let's go in, Yizan said, preparing to enter the room immediately. But, Teacher, I'd better come first. Suzuki Yuanzi looked at Yizan. If there is danger, I can resist for a while. Yizan looked at Suzuki Sonoko. Although he knew that he would not have any problems, he still had some feelings in his heart. The women he met were like this, and he always thought of himself first. Okay. Yizan touched Suzuki Sonoko's hair, and the decision in his heart became more determined. Be careful. Suzuki Sonoko quickly entered the room of the haunted house. Then. There's no after that. From the inside, there is nothing wrong with the entire haunted house, that is, the surroundings are quiet and the light is not very bright. Besides, there is nothing wrong. Well, Suzuki Sonoko has no fear of haunted houses in her heart, and because she can transform into a ghost, it doesn't feel like it. In addition, there is no Yizan trouble, naturally very calm. And the whole house is relatively tidy because it has become a gathering place for those who killed the marshals to change their fate. So, after a while, Suzuki Sonoko got bored and looked at Yizan. What's going on? There's nothing here. Yizan didn't speak, but pointed to a tightly closed door. What happened to that room? Suzuki Sonoko opened the door strangely. However, there is a channel inside. Let's go, Yizan said slowly to Suzuki Sonoko. This room was artificially built up later. Suzuki Sonoko followed behind Yizan and was a little speechless about Yizan's words. Why is this room artificially covered up? Isn't the whole house built by people? Yizan seemed to know what Suzuki Sonoko was thinking, and continued in that slow tone. Actually, this haunted house was my house a long time ago, and then it was abandoned for some reason, but I didn't expect it to be picked up again now. And there is something in it that is not bad, it is suitable for you. Yizan said, and came to a door at the end of the passage. This is the basement, some scenes, you have to be mentally prepared. Psychological preparation. Suzuki Sonoko said that he had no psychological preparation. It's just some corpses or something. Yizan said, slowly opening the door of the basement. Chapter 44 _ Actually you know me. The stench, a disgusting stench rushed towards him, making Suzuki Sonoko almost unbearable. Yizan also frowned slightly. These people are really too greedy. Yizan looked at everything in front of him and said slowly. As for Suzuki Sonoko, after seeing all this in front of him, his eyes widened and his mouth opened in horror. Seeing this, Yizan covered his ears without saying a word, because Yizan knew very well what would happen next. As expected. Ah! An earth-shattering scream came from Suzuki Sonoko's mouth, and even Yizan covered his ears, he could hear it clearly. Okay. Yizan waited for a while, then let go of his ears, and said to Suzuki Sonoko, isn't it just some corpses? As for how frightened you are. Suzuki Sonoko blankly pointed at the many corpses in the basement and looked at Yizan in shock. After a while, he regained his ability to speak normally, and shouted, isn't it? So many corpses. What do you mean by not just some corpses? Yizan took out 433 feet ears. What a fuss, these corpses are not all, most of the corpses have been absorbed by the fate line and abandoned. Yizan said slowly. Yizan's words made Suzuki Sonoko gulp blankly, looking at all this in front of him. In front of Suzuki Sonoko, the entire basement was filled with all kinds of corpses, which were neatly arranged. The densely crowded corpses made Suzuki Sonoko feel numb in his scalp. The thousands of corpses turned out to be like goods, shoving neatly and exuding a mysterious atmosphere. And then Yizan's reaction made Suzuki Sonoko refresh his worldview. Yizan waved his hand, covered his nose, and muttered, really, what did this group of people do to my house? I don't know how to clean it, it smells so bad. When Suzuki Sonoko was about to speak, Yizan suddenly stopped Suzuki Sonoko and went straight to the side and said, okay, don't talk, those people are here. Following Yizan's words, Suzuki Sonoko saw that the entrance to the basement was opened. Many people who seemed to be successful people filed in, and Suzuki Sonoko was shocked that these people turned a blind eye to the bizarre scene of many corpses. No, it should be more accurate to say, accustomed to it, that is to say, these people often come to this place. Before long, dozens of people gathered in the basement. Okay, everyone is here, the ceremony can begin. Following the crowd's words, Yizan smiled slightly and said to Suzuki Sonoko, okay, they're useless. I'll be the abbot for this ceremony. Yizan said, walked out with Suzuki Yuanzi, and said to Suzuki Yuanzi, the killing of these people is up to you. Ah, Suzuki Sonoko looked at Yizan suspiciously, kill. Of course, and it is absolutely necessary to ensure that no one can escape. Yizan said, and came to the center of the field skillfully, and quickly drew his hands on the ground. What are you doing? The people who came to the basement looked at Yizan's actions, shouted and attacked Yizan. Yizan, on the other hand, lowered his head and continued to draw on the ground regardless. Seeing this, Suzuki Sonoko could only close his eyes, turning into an illusion and attacking the crowd. What the hell is this? In the panic of everyone, Suzuki Sonoko killed everyone. Okay, Sonoko, they are all dead, you can open your eyes. Yizan's words sounded warmly, and the calm and gentle words made Suzuki Sonoko strangely quiet, and the sequelae of murder was reduced to the lowest. Okay, let's get into this formation. Yizan said slowly. Hearing this, Suzuki Sonoko nodded and came to the center of the arena. Yizan's fingers sketched in the void. Lines of fate that were invisible to the naked eye were pulled from the many corpses and quickly converged on Suzuki Sonoko. Suzuki Sonoko looked at his hands in amazement. At this moment, Suzuki Sonoko could clearly feel the different changes in himself. What the hell is going on? Suzuki Sonoko looked at Yizan and asked. Bonus you and become the son of destiny. Suzuki Sonoko looked at himself strangely. Son of destiny. Yes. Yizan nodded slowly and exhaled a turbid breath. Okay, it's done. After you have the identity of the son of destiny, everything you do will be very smooth, if there is divine help. Yizan's words made Suzuki Sonoko look at Yizan suspiciously. Really? Of course. Yizan nodded and said to Suzuki Sonoko. Suzuki Sonoko's mouth cracked into a smile. Well, I want to see what the teacher's face looks like. Following Suzuki Sonoko's words, Yizan shook his head helplessly. You ghost. Yizan said, and slowly put his hand on Silver's white mask. Looking at Suzuki Sonoko's unblinking eyes, Yizan said slowly, actually, you know me. Yizan's words left Suzuki Sonoko dumbfounded. I know you. Yizan nodded. Yes, you know me. Yizan said and took off his silver white mask. Huh. Suzuki Sonoko was dumbfounded. So, I said, you know me. While Yizan was doing these things, on the other hand, Yasaka Kudo and Yukiko Kudo were about to come to an end to change their fate for Conan. Okay, I have basically understood the basics of Shinichi's place, and I have been out of danger, but I don't know why I haven't fully woken up. Kudo Yukiko looked at Kudo Yasaka and said. I feel that it should be the cause of the so-called child of destiny. Kudo Yasaka frowned slightly. I'm going to continue the matter. But the next thing is still more dangerous. Are we doing less dangerous things? In that case, well. Chapter 45-cold. When Yasaka Kudo and Yukiko Kudo were about to change the fate of Conan, on the other hand, there was a commission from Kogoro Mori's detective agency. Kogoro Mori joined Yoko's crew as a consultant. These problems are nothing, until after the shooting, when Mao Lilan went to the actor Nachi to sign his autograph, he saw that he was threatened by the photographer Anxi. Yizan sighed. Yizan was lying on a big bunk with Suzuki Sonoko, talking about love. A flower on the other side appeared beside Yizan. Huh. Yizan turned over a Byakugan, a little speechless. Suzuki Sonoko, who was weakly beside Yizan, looked at Yizan's somewhat annoyed look, and asked curiously, what's wrong? Did something happen? Yizan helplessly told Suzuki Sonoko about the situation. Then, hee. Suzuki Sonoko's reaction was exactly the same as number 18 feet S. They all covered their mouths and chuckled as they looked at Yizan and said, then you will suffer more okay. Quote. Yizan looked at Suzuki Sonoko speechlessly, and finally left the other side of the flower directly to one side, and rushed directly to Suzuki Sonoko. HMPH, if you dare to laugh at your husband, today I will let you know what it means to revive Fugong. Following Yizan's words, a roaring voice bloomed throughout the room. On the other hand, when Yizan was doing this, Maori Kogoro sighed. The whole crew went back to the hotel for dinner happily. During this period, Teiko went home to pick up things. Her fiancé, Shimazaki, sold cigarettes. After returning to the hotel, Teiko saw Anxi who was out and was full of fear. Ran and Yoko were on their way out shopping when they found Ansai who died at the shrine. Murder, it happened again. Then, it was the various reactions of Kogoro Mori and others, calling the police, controlling the scene, and so on. After the arrival of the police officer Mumu, some things have almost been figured out. However, Yizan was extremely unhappy. Because Miu Miu thought of Yizan again after seeing how difficult this case was. Beep beep. And Yizan, who was doing some shameful things, turned off the phone without saying a word. Clean. A smile cracked at the corner of Yizan's mouth, looking at the shy Suzuki Sonoko under him. a smile cracked at the corner of his mouth, and he charged towards Suzuki Sonoko again. When Yizan's coquettish voice rang out one after another. The other side. Officer Miu Miu stared blankly at the mobile phone in his hand, helpless for a while. Why didn't you answer the phone? Officer Miu Miu was a little helpless, so he could only temporarily start questioning everyone while thinking about what was going on. Time passed slowly. Wait until after 3 pulls in the sun. Yizan yawned loudly, looking at Sonoko Suzuki, who was still asleep in his arms, cracked a smile, and slowly got up. After everything was almost done, he came to Yizan's side on the 18th, holding the other side flower in one hand and the phone in the other, and said to Yizan, "Husband, it's time for you to handle the case." Yizan looked at all this and was stunned for a moment. Then he remembered that it seemed that he had indeed received a call last night. Cough cough. I almost forgot, Yizan said, taking the phone number 18. I don't think you almost forgot, but you already forgot, number 18 said, handing the phone in his hand to Yizan with a smile. As soon as Yizan took the phone rang. Hey. Finally connected. On the other hand, the police officer Miu Miu finally breathed a sigh of relief and said with a bitter expression, Yizan, I have another difficult case here. Yizan naturally expected the words of the police officer Miu Miu, and yawned greatly and said, well, where is the location? Following the conversation between the two, Yizan soon drove to the location of Officer Mumu. Okay, let's talk, what's going on in the case? Yizan said casually. Officer Miu Miu hurriedly greeted Yizan, while telling Yizan the clues and all aspects of the case. Well, I have basically understood the matter. Yizan said, looked at the crowd and said, well, the murderer should be one of these people. Yizan said something in a daze, and then yawned, ah. Yizan said sleepily, I was just getting up from the bunk when the police officer Mumu pulled me over. Well, the murderer took the initiative to admit it and forget it. Hello, everyone, don't let me waste my brain cells. Yizan's words made everyone speechless. If the murderer turns himself in, does he still need you to come? Again, when is this? Just got up. However, Yizan ignored the thoughts of everyone. After seeing that no one responded, he slowly started to check the surrounding scenes. On the other hand, Kogoro Mori quietly came to Shaolin's side. Shaolin, what's wrong with the two of you? Why didn't Yizan come over to greet you? Maori Kogoro was puzzled about Yizan's ignoring of Maorilan. Maolilan lowered his head and did not speak. Maolilan's reaction to Yizan was also a little sad and sad. It didn't take long for Yizan to solve the case, and then he was about to turn around and leave. At this time, Maori Shaogoro came to Yizan's side, looked at Yizan and said, Yizan, you are here, why don't you say hello to Shaolin? Yizan glanced at Maori Kogoro, and shook his head slightly, I don't want it anymore. If Shaolin's words are concerned, let's calm down for the time being. Following Yizan's words, Maori Kogoro wanted to ask something else, but was taken away directly by Maorilan. At the last moment, Maolilan glanced at Yi Xuandao, without you. Conan is alive too. Yizan looked at Maolilan and nodded slowly, well, just come back to life, wouldn't that be great? Yizan said, facing the police officer Mumu, the case is basically like this. If there is nothing, I will just leave. Hem. With the response of the police officer Mumu, Yizan quickly left. On the spot, Maolilan stared blankly at Yizan's departure, a trace of tears flashing in his eyes. Chapter 46-Regret. Maolilan didn't know what happened to him, or did not know what happened to Yizan. Didn't the two of them get along well before? Why did it suddenly become like this? HMPH, what a cow. Maori Kogoro came to Maolilan's side. It's okay, let's ignore him. Maolilan didn't say anything dull. In fact, Maolilan himself knew that it was his own fault, but after all, it was a life. As an ordinary person, Maolilan still couldn't help but die. However, for Yizan still couldn't accept Maolilan's attitude towards Conan, so he lost his mind. This is the difference in concepts. Yizan is extremely powerful, and there is no shortage of women around him. Compared with Yizan, Mao Lilan is bound by many worldly concepts and cannot escape from the world. It was extremely troublesome. After all, Yizan was in a high position, but the women around him were always bound by the world, and the collision of ideas would be extremely violent. For example, when it comes to dealing with Conan, Mao Lilan feels that it is the concern between ordinary neighbors, but in Yizan's eyes, Conan is the protagonist of this world, and the son of destiny. Once there is a collision with himself, the consequences will be very serious. In order to prevent any major problems in the future, Yizan dealt with Conan in advance, but in Mao Lilan's eyes, this matter turned into killing innocents by himself. What's wrong, Shaolin? Why are you unhappy? Maori Kogoro looked at Maorilan strangely, feeling a little strange in his heart. As a bachelor, Maori Kogoro's speculation about a woman's mind is really far from perfect. When such a thing happened, everyone lacked interest, and it didn't take long for Maori Kogoro and Maurilan to return home. Husband, Conan, the last moment of resurrection has begun, do you want to destroy it? Number 18 looked at Yi Xuandao. Yizan shook his head. No need, he will be resurrected if he is resurrected. These days of solving the case are still a bit boring for me, so I will leave it to him. Okay. 18 nodded. Conan is resurrected. When talking to Yizan on the 18th, Suzuki Sonoko came to the two of them and looked at them with some surprise. Can the dead be resurrected? Suzuki Sonoko looked at Yizan and asked. Well, if you use the right method, resurrection is also a very simple thing. Yizan said slowly to Suzuki Sonoko. Although Suzuki Sonoko was a little surprised, he didn't ask any more questions. For Suzuki Sonoko, the world had long exceeded his expectations, and the whole world had changed beyond recognition, at least not the world he knew. Therefore, Yizan said about the resurrection, and Suzuki Sonoko believed it. This is why Yizan accepted Suzuki Sonoko but left Mao Lilan behind. And when Yizan explained this to everyone, on the other hand, Mao Lilan looked at Conan's resurrection, and a smile cracked at the corner of his mouth. Conan, you're all right. Mao Lilan looked at Conan's ignorance when he opened his eyes, and said, I just said, you won't die. Maurilan's words silenced Conan. Compared with Maurilan, Conan, who was resurrected, was very clear about the reason for his resurrection. Father, mother, Conan murmured, the remorse in his heart beyond words. It can be seen that he has always not believed in Yizan's words too much, but the final result was something Conan never expected. In the end, the two results were all because of his own willfulness, which resulted in extremely serious consequences. Mao Lilan finally saw that Conan ignored him and left, feeling very sad in his heart. Mao Lilan didn't know what happened to him. Why is Yizan like this and Conan like this? Lan, what's wrong with you? Maori Kogoro asked Maurilan after returning home in frustration. It's okay. After Mao Lilan said in a low mood, he went straight into his room. Outside the door, Kogoro Maori glanced at Maurilan strangely, and stroked his chin thoughtfully. Time flies. For a few days, Mao Lilan was not in a good mood. And in this case, Lan, come, let's go on the cruise together. Kogoro Maori said to the depressed Maurilan with 3 tickets in his hand. Maurilan glanced at Conan on the side, and did not want to stay with Conan in his heart. No, Maurilan said to Maori Kogoro in a bad mood. The tickets have been bought, they are very expensive. Let's go together. As Maori Kogoro said, he took Maurilan away involuntarily. Maori Lan looked at Conan beside Maori Kogoro, and finally could only helplessly follow. Then, Maurilan felt that it was a mistake to follow his father, Kogoro Mori and Conan. Because the 3 of them got on the luxury cruise ship of the Zhuangbin family by accident, although they met the newlyweds Xiaozhang and Xiaowu with a good attitude. However, the remaining family members were not so friendly towards them both. In this weird mood, Hao Zhang, the head of the house, was killed. When Mao Lilan saw all this, he was slightly stunned. Death, murder, this familiar scene reminded Mao Lilan of Yizan again. Why do you want this 2.5 for me? Yizan's appearance appeared again in Mao Lilan's mind. And Conan, who was next to the father and daughter of Morilan, had the detective disease again, and once again came to the scene of the crime with Kogoro Mori, and quickly began to investigate. And when the two began to investigate, Yizan, who had been paying attention to all this, finally breathed a sigh of relief. Because Yizan finally found out, the snow-white other side flower that had been haunting him finally disappeared. In other words, the next detective thing, I found Conan again. As expected, I'm still suitable for bubble girl paper. When I'm idle and bored, I go to practice. Yizan said while looking at the investigation case. Chapter 47_send you flowers. In fact, for Yizan, solving a case is actually a practice. In the world of Conan, the flow of fate is the most complicated only when a case occurs. Other than that, it is a very normal operation. However, after Yizan practiced hard for a while, he would always choose to be lazy for a while, and in the world of Conan, apart from the fact that the flow of fate is simple and conducive to Yizan's understanding of fate, the most important reason is because Yizan wants to be lazy. Now, Yizan can finally be lazy for a while. Time passed, and it didn't take long for Conan to solve the case. However, Mao Lilan felt that Conan was not as handsome as Yizan, and he was not as mysterious as Yizan. It felt as if Conan was a child, while Yizan was a wise man. Putting it under the light, Yizan is very subtle, hiding everything about himself, and revealing a little bit makes people feel intoxicated. Well, what am I thinking? Mao Lilan quickly shook his head. Yizan looks like he doesn't care about me anymore. Mao Lilan shook his head, but didn't say anything more. After the case was solved, the rest of the matter was naturally that there was nothing to do with Conan, Mori Kogoro and others, and the three left the cruise ship not long after. When Maurilan was so dull all the time, Yizan was stunned to see the other side flowers slowly falling in the sky again. Don't bring such a fool! Yizan shouted. Yizan spent so much effort, but in the end he still didn't get rid of this ghostly flower. This is... Yizan felt it. Looking at the TV, what was playing on the TV was the escape of the person who was previously sent to prison by Kogoro Mori and himself. It turned out to be this matter. Yizan stretched his waist slightly. Well, it's not a big deal anyway, so just go for a visit. Following Yizan's words, Yizan slowly got up and said to number 18 and Suzuki Sonoko on the side, I'll go out first, it's not like being lazy all the time. On the 18th, Byakugan committed a big promise and gave it to Yizan. You are too embarrassed to say that you have been lazy. If it weren't for this other side flower, I think you would continue to be lazy. Yizan looked at number 18 and waved his hand casually. Don't care about those unimportant things. Yizan said and left his mansion. And not long after Yizan left. On the other hand, Mori Kogoro was not in a good mood when he looked at Morilan, so he took Morilan and Conan to go shopping. However, when passing the overpass, he bumped into a girl who was in a trance. Hey, how are you? Are you okay? Mori Kogoro hurriedly looked at the girl in his arms and asked. However, the girl fell into a coma in Mori Kogoro's arms, making Mori Kogoro's heart feel dark for a while. Send her to the hospital. Conan's words made Mori Kogoro temporarily give up the feeling of nephrite in his arms. After going to the hospital to check. Amnesia. Everyone looked at the doctor in surprise. It's just a temporary loss of memory, it shouldn't be long before you'll be fine. After hearing the doctor's words, everyone was ready to look for the girl's clues so that the girl could restore her memory. The girl also followed everyone out of the hospital, and when everyone found out, they could only help the girl to follow. With Conan there, everyone quickly found the hotel where she was staying from the only information. Then, Conan kept asking all kinds of questions. After a short while, Conan's question gave the girl a headache and ran out of the hotel. Squeak. At this time, the harsh braking sound suddenly remembered that a car was approaching. However, to everyone's surprise, the girl quickly and agilely avoided it. The investigation continued, but the more the investigation, the more surprised Conan became. During the investigation, Conan found that the woman was unbelievably strong. Although she was not as strong as Yi-zan, she was definitely not at the level that ordinary people could achieve. The kind that can always be avoided. Driving dangerous swift movements is definitely not something that ordinary people can do. Who is she? Also, why do we always get attacked after meeting her? Conan was extremely puzzled. In Conan's confusion, Yi-zan's figure suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Yi-zan. As soon as Yi-zan appeared, Mao Lilan saw Yi-zan and looked at Yi-zan in surprise. Yi-zan glanced at Mao Lilan, then put his eyes on the girl, shook his head slightly, and a white other side flower appeared in his hand. Blood-white flower. Both Mao Lilan and Conan said something in surprise. Yi-zan ignored the two and handed the white other side flower in his hand to the girl in front of him. "Nuo, I'll give you a flower." Yi-zan's words caused everyone present to be extremely surprised. Almost subconsciously, Mao Lilan yelled at the girl, "Don't." In an instant, Yi-zan's brows furrowed again. Well, the gap between the two of them is not the same world has appeared again, and the situation of the woman's benevolence has appeared again. Although Yi-zan is not a person who kills innocent people indiscriminately, but for some people who should be killed, Yi-zan it is also very decisive, and the women around Yi-zan have always followed Yi-zan's side, and they understand Yi-zan's behavior. Even some women around Yi-zan are more murderous than Yi-zan, while a woman who doesn't understand Yi-zan's behavior is also very sensible, knowing that she doesn't understand much, so she rarely interferes with Yi-zan's behavior. But, Morilin. Ah. Yi-zan sighed from the bottom of his heart. When he first appeared, Mao Lilan's reaction was also in his eyes. Mao Lilan definitely liked him, and at worst, he had a different feeling about himself. However, Yi-zan really felt that he had nothing to do with Mao Lilan, who was a woman. Once he did something to Mao Lilan, he would definitely not ignore Mao Lilan's feelings. No, to be precise, it doesn't matter to Mao Lilan, and he also has Mao Lilan in mind, just like this time. Chapter 48 _ Do you believe this nonsense too? This time, the reason why Yi-zan came here was not so much because of the snow-white other side flower, but because he was worried about Mao Lilan's safety. When will my sympathy for Lian Xiangxiu be corrected? Yi-zan shook his head, looked at the girl who was on guard and refused to accept the snow-white other side flower, and sighed, already giving up hope for this matter. To Mao Lilan, if this is the case, then I will leave first, but when you regret calling me over, I also have some requirements. The corner of Yi-zan's mouth cracked a slight smile, and said slowly. Yi-zan said, turned and left. In fact, Yi-zan was very sure that the girl would eventually take action against Maori Kogoro and others. And Mao Lilan, as the only person with a high level of force among the three, will definitely take action, but the girl opposite as a full-time killer who kills is still incompetent. Sure enough, it didn't take long for the girl to regain her memory. Then began to plan the shot against Morilin, Mori Kogoro and Conan. It started. Yi-zan, who had been feeling all this casually in the bar, smiled slightly at the corner of his mouth. Soon, Morilin saw the scene where Mori Kogoro was almost killed by the girl. What are you doing? Mao Lilan rushed towards the girl quickly. After a few moves, Mao Lilan was subdued. It's really an impatient little girl, the girl said to Mao Lilan, and the silk thread in her hand directly tied Mao Lilan's jade neck. At this moment, Yi-zan's figure appeared again in Mao Lilan's heart. Why do you do this every time? Just sit on your own business and force yourself to impose your tenderness on others. Yi-zan's figure appeared in Mao Lilan's heart again, but, the strange thing is that Mao Lilan did not feel any regret in his heart. Maybe it's because Mao Lilan himself had expected this a long time ago. Yi-zan's behavior has always been so domineering, regardless of whether others understand it or not, he directly imposes his own behavior on others. It's really domineering. Mao Lilan closed his eyes slightly, ready to meet death. Bah! With the sound of a physical body collision, Mao Lilan opened his eyes ignorantly. When he saw Yi Zan's lazy appearance, behind him was the woman who nearly killed him. Yi Zan. Mao Lilan's eyes flashed with different expressions, looking at Yi Zan. Yi Zan glanced at Mao Lilan, and the calm eyes finally made Mao Lilan unacceptable. With a coquettish shout, he rushed towards Yi Zan. Why are you doing this to me? Why are you so proud? So domineering. I hate you so much. Mao Lilan cried and screamed in Yi Zan's arms. On the other hand, Yi Zan glanced at Maori Kogoro, who was pretending to be in a coma on the side, suppressed his thoughts of teasing Mao Lilan, and slowly pulled Mao Lilan into his arms, but didn't say much. Yi Zan was not too good way to solve this. Sister Shaolin. At this time, Conan's voice woke Mao Lilan suddenly, only then did he react, and hurriedly came out of Yi Zan's arms. Sister Shaolin, are you all right? Conan asked concernedly, looking at Morilan and Maori Kogoro. Mao Lilan's face was a little yuhi, thinking of how weak he just looked, and he was a little shy inside. He glanced at when Yi Zan was about to say something. Yi Zan, however, looked at Conan, with a strange smile on the corner of his mouth. It's funny, don't you accept the resurrection of killing others? What? How did you survive this time? Yi Zan's words made Mao Lilan look at the two of them suspiciously. Conan looked at Yi Zan fixedly. It has nothing to do with you. A smile cracked at the corner of Yi Zan's mouth, and finally turned into a wanton smile. It's really fun, it has nothing to do with me, so how did you come back to life? I'm my parents. Conan suddenly stopped talking, looking at Yi Zan cautiously. What do you want to do? Conan was worried that he said that his resurrection was obtained by his parents killing others, and there would be problems in the end. Yi Zan looked at Conan and said, you were resurrected after your parents killed nearly 1,000 people. Conan looked at Yi Zan, but did not speak. Conan's reaction quickly let Maorilan and Maori Kogoro know that what Yi Zan said was true. Conan, you. Mao Lilan looked at Conan in shock. What if it's true? It's my business. Conan's words made Yi Zan burst into laughter. It has nothing to do with me. Why don't you talk about the method your parents used? Do you know that in order to prevent the abuse of this method, I have been controlling the spread of this method? Quote. Conan was silent for a while, then looked at Yi Zan with an angry look in his eyes. You know everything. Conan's angry words made Yi Zan's mouth crack into a smile. Of course, you must know that the method your parents adopted is a simplified version of the method I took. How could I not know? The conversation between Yi Zan and Conan made Mao Lilan on the side look at Conan in surprise. It turns out that you were resurrected because... Morilan couldn't believe his ears. After seeing Conan nodded, Mao Lilan suddenly burst into a wry smile. I'm so stupid, but I always thought you were a man and you climbed back from the god of death, hee. Yi Zan looked at Mao Lilan and shook his head slightly. Do you believe this kind of nonsense? He was so injured that he didn't die immediately. Thank God, he still crawled over from the god of death. Chapter 49_It's me. Looking at Conan's silent appearance, Mao Lilan couldn't help laughing at how stupid he was, helping such a person. You already knew this would happen, didn't you? Mao Lilan said firmly, looking at Yi Zan. Yi Zan nodded. Yes. Then why didn't you tell me, just to make fun of me? Mao Lilan looked at Yi Zan a little sad. I told you before, you can think about the result yourself. Yi Zan said to the crowd. Okay, the matter here is basically resolved, I will leave first. Yi Zan said, ignoring everyone's stop, and left the place directly. On the spot, Mao Lilan glanced at Conan without saying much, and said to Mori Kogoro, let's go. Seeing this, Conan didn't say much, and returned to Dr. Ali's residence. Yi Zan would come home and greet him on the 18th. It's over, number 18 asked indifferently. Yi Zan nodded. Of course, Conan's affairs can't be hidden after all. Yi Zan said, stretched his waist greatly, looked at the two women next to him, a smile cracked at the corner of his mouth, and hugged the two women directly, ready to do some showy things. However, no, there have been some problems with the outside forces 613 recently, and I need to deal with them, so I guess I won't be at home often in recent days. On the 18th, looking at Yizan, he said. Yizan looked at number 18 and pursed the corners of his mouth slightly. Forget it, in that case, go get busy. No, 18 nodded and turned to leave. And Yizan cracked a smile, looked at Suzuki Sonoko, and slowly evoked a lewd smile. Suzuki Sonoko naturally knew what Yizan's performance meant, lowered his head slightly, and a shy Yuhi raised his face. Seeing this, Yizan was naturally impolite and walked directly towards Suzuki Sonoko. Soon, the entire mansion fell into chaos. Time flies, in a leisurely life. Morilin resumed visiting again. To do some shameful things with Suzuki Sonoko and number 18 in front of Maulilan again and again, and the scale became bigger and bigger, which made Maulilan feel a strange feeling in his heart. When Yizan was slowly and subtly training Maulilan, a message made Yizan temporarily give up his leisurely life. Anyone else posted a mission. Yizan, who was teasing with Suzuki Sonoko, looked at the news in his hand and felt a little weird. The news in Yizan's hands is the news of Yizan's killer organization. Because of its extremely demanding commissions, Yizan's killer organization is not an ordinary desperate person, and seldom uses Yizan's killer organization. And this time, Yizan's killer organization actually received the killer mission again. Well, so that's what it is. After Yizan took a look, he basically understood what was going on. After seeing the news, Yizan casually put the news aside and started teasing with Suzuki Sonoko again. After waiting for both of them to be satisfied, Yizan turned around and left. After Suzuki Sonoko in the mansion finished resting, he saw the paper that Yizan put on the table, thinking it was waste paper, and quickly discarded it. The discarded garbage was soon discovered by Conan and began to pick it up. This is... Conan looked at the piece of paper in his hand and hurried towards Morilin's house. Sister Shaolin, your classmate Naoko will be kidnapped, Conan said quickly to Maulilan. And Conan's words made Morilin and Mori Kogoro look at Conan. Both of them now know Conan's identity, so they didn't despise Conan's words, but quickly called the police. Soon, Officer Mumu brought the police to the location of Conan and others. How did you know that? Naoko's father looked at everyone in disbelief and asked in disbelief. Don't worry about this, agree to the gangster's request first, Officer Megumi said to Naoko's father. So, under the directing of Yizan, Naoko's father's secretary Hanai finally saw the face of Naoko's father completely, but a father is unwilling to spend part of his money to save his daughter's life. So, is it really decided? Once it is decided, it cannot be cancelled, because he will die in a short time. Our efficiency has always been very good. Yizan, who was wearing a silver mask engraved with the flower of the other side, looked at Naoko in front of him. Hanai, my father's secretary, asked. Yeah, Secretary Hua Jing nodded at Yizan. Okay, the mission begins. As Yizan said, beside him, the figure of number 18 suddenly appeared. Yizan said to number 18, she will be handed over to you, and I will complete the task. Yizan said and left quickly. Soon. Naoko's death. Be careful, Conan watched Naoko's father's death and wanted to stop it. However, a bullet had passed through Naoko's father's forehead. Okay, it's done, Yizan said to Hua Jing, the secretary beside him, you can rest easy. With the departure of Secretary Huajing, Yizan said to number 18, it's still the old rule, take over everything from this person. 18 nodded. And Yizan left. However, before Yizan left for a long time, Conan came to Yizan with Maori Lan and Maori Kogoro. You did it. Conan looked at Yi Xuandao with certainty. Yizan looked at Conan strangely, what? Conan looked at Yizan and said, Naoko's father, it was you who killed him. Conan said with certainty. At the same time, a piece of paper in his hand was also displayed in front of Yizan. In an instant, Yizan knew that this piece of paper was kept at home by himself. Squinting his eyes slightly, Yizan quickly understood how Conan got this piece of paper. Then, he said to everyone, "Yes, it's me." "Why?" Mao Lilan looked at Yizan suspiciously and said, "You will be caught and sent to jail like this." There is a link in the book review area of the new book, Dead Sea of Fire with a confused face. It is a work of hard work and it is worth seeing. Chapter 50_Maurilan changes. A smile cracked at the corner of Yizan's mouth, and he waved his hand. "It's okay." Conan looked at Yizan and said, "What? I don't believe you can escape the punishment of the law. Then see if I can escape the legal punishment." Yizan smiled and pointed to the tape recorder in Conan's pocket. "That gadget of yours doesn't seem to have any effect. So, I'm sorry, you don't seem to have any evidence of my murder." Yizan said and turned to leave. And Mao Lilan quickly came to Yizan's side. "Why did you kill him? Can you tell me?" Yizan looked at Mao Lilan's pleading look. His mouth suddenly cracked into a smile, and said to Mao Lilan, "Want to know?" "Yeah." Mao Lilan looked at Yizan in surprise and said, "Will you tell me?" "Come to my house tonight, I'll tell you." After Yizan said something, he turned and left. On the spot, Conan looked at Yizan and shouted, "I will definitely arrest you." Yizan ignored it and continued to walk away. For Yizan has too many means to kill without leaving any trace, and Conan wants to find evidence. It is simply a fantasy. For example, Yizan's shooting this time looks like a shooting case, but if you investigate the bullet, you will find that there is no gunpowder in the bullet at all. It is just a bullet-shaped iron lump, but it was used by Yizan extremely. The penetrating force just shot into the opponent's forehead abruptly. Night. Mao Lilan tossed and turned, and finally decided to find Yizan. The big deal is to sleep there. I don't believe that he can really do anything to me. Mao Lilan pretended to be courageous and walked towards Yizan's mansion. And Mao Lilan didn't know that Yizan's courage was definitely not as small as he thought. What's that sound? Not long after entering Yizan's mansion, Mao Lilan heard a different voice. Looking for a voice. It didn't take long for Mao Lilan to see a scene that made him stunned. Yizan is sitting on the lawn of the mansion with Suzuki Sonoko and number 18, doing something inappropriate for children. "Ah!" Mao Lilan exclaimed, quickly attracting the attention of the three. "It's Lan, you're here, do you want to come together?" Yizan asked with a sinister smile on the corner of his mouth. Yizan's words just frightened Mao Lilan to turn around and leave. In the next few days, Mao Lilan was embarrassed to come to Yizan's mansion. After meeting Suzuki Sonoko later, Suzuki Sonoko's happy and beautiful smile made Maurilan feel a little itchy. "Is that kind of thing really comfortable?" Maurilan asked Yuhi, looking at Suzuki Sonoko with a shy face. Suzuki Sonoko's eyes widened, and he quickly pulled Maurilan over, and began to instill in Maurilan thoughts that were not suitable for children. While saying this, Maurilan also knew the truth of the previous murder case. Although he is at fault, Yizan is really too dangerous. If he is discovered. Before Mao Lilan could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Suzuki Sonoko. "You underestimate Yizan. Do you really think that Yizan is an ordinary person? A person who knows fate and can easily change fate? Could it be a simple man? Such a man is not so much a man as it is God." Quote. "Sonoko, why do you think so? No matter how powerful he is, he can become an enemy of the world." Maurilan said to Suzuki Sonoko. Suzuki Sonoko nodded. "Of course." Suzuki Sonoko said to Mao Lilan, "I finally understand why my husband treats you like that. You still can't escape the limitations of ordinary people's eyes. Let me show you something." Suzuki Sonoko said, and in Maurilan's surprised and fearful eyes, he slowly became a little transparent. "See, I can become a ghost-like being." Following Suzuki Sonoko's words, Moriyuan touched Suzuki Sonoko with trembling hands, but passed through Suzuki Sonoko's body. Ah! Mao Lilan screamed in horror and quickly backed away. And Suzuki Sonoko turned into a real body again, looked at Moriyuan and said, "And this ability of mine was only acquired in less than half a year of my husband's teaching." Suzuki Sonoko's words made Moriyuan's eyes widen completely. He really couldn't believe that this kind of thing that only existed in illusion actually appeared in front of him, and the owner was still his friend. "So, we shouldn't look at him with ordinary eyes," Suzuki Sonoko said to Moriyuan. And Mao Lilan just nodded blankly. "I'll go back first." Well, these things have indeed had a bit of a powerful impact on Moriyuan's worldview. However, as time passed, after accepting this matter, Mao Lilan figured out many things, including many of Yizan's previous behaviors and thoughts. At this moment, Mao Lilan's heart also underwent a great change. And in this case, Conan encountered a case again. When Conan walked to Sakaguchi's house, a woman suddenly rushed out and shouted that the dog was killing. It was a man named Xiao Geng, who was killed by a dog named John. It turned out that Mr. Sakaguchi asked Xiaogeng to take care of John when he was on a business trip, but he didn't expect such a tragedy. Conan, on the other hand, used his detective nature again. When investigating the suicide of Sakaguchi's son Masato, he found that Masato's suicide was related to Xiaogeng, so he guessed that it was a murder case, and Sakaguchi became the biggest one. Suspect. However, Conan didn't know what the murder method was, what kind of order, and how did he order John to attack Xiaogeng. And because it was a murder case, Officer Mumu came over again. "Yizan, come here." Officer Mumu looked at the helpless Conan, feeling helpless, so he could only call Yizan again, but he had no choice. Although Yizan was the suspect in the previous case, he had no choice but to call Yizan again. Officer Mu was really impressed by Yizan's speed and technique in solving the case before, and some couldn't stand Conan's humiliation. Chapter 51 _ I'm the first to solve the case. No time, wait. After Yizan said casually, he hung up the phone. Who is it? The disheveled Suzuki Sonoko got out of Yizan's arms and asked. It's okay. Yizan said, and twisted together with Suzuki Sonoko again. Wait until most of the day has passed. Yi Shuenkai came to the scene. Ah, Yizan yawned loudly. What's wrong? What's the matter? Officer Miu Miu came to Yizan in a pleasing manner and said, this case, let's see if it's a murder case or an accident. Following Officer Miu Miu's description, Yizan said casually, it should be a murder case, after all, this matter is controllable. Yizan's words made Conan on the side say, HMPH, then tell me how to control it. Conan's words made Yizan glance at Conan and said to Officer Mumu, who is this guy? This. Officer Mumu was also a little embarrassed. It's really not good to have two detectives at once, but he was the first to find out about the case. At the words of the police officer Miu Miu, Yizan waved his hand. Forget it, tell me the details. Following Yizan's words, Officer Miu Miu quickly described the matter to Yizan. Yizan nodded. That thing is not simple. Just recreate the scene. We did it again. No. Conan interjected. Yizan didn't speak, but the police officer Miu Miu looked at Yizan and said hesitantly, we have indeed tested it. Yizan turned around and left. Then check it out for yourself. What are you asking me to do? It's a lot of work. Don't say goodbye. Officer Miu Miu hurriedly stopped in front of Yizan and said, it's my fault, I'll listen to you and reproduce the scene. However, before the reproduction of the scene began, it was stopped by Yizan. Is the scene here? No, Officer Mumu said. But, the crime scene needs clues. No need. Yizan waved his hand and said, go directly to the crime scene and reproduce it. Yizan said domineeringly. Everyone was helpless, so they could only go to the scene with Yizan. Okay, we can start. Following Yizan's words, everyone began to let the dog's owner Sakaguchi speak again. Stop. Yizan didn't wait for Sakaguchi to speak, and said to Officer Mumu, "Is there a limit to being stingy? Why save the phone bill? Just make a call." Yizan's words made Officer Mumu look at Sakaguchi with some embarrassment. "Look. Who are you?" Sakaguchi looked at Yizan and said, "I have tried so many times since the case happened, and if I have to get through every time, it will cost a lot of money." "Fight," Yizan said firmly. "Well, give it a call." Officer Mumu looked at Sakaguchi and said, "I'll pay for your phone bill." Sakaguchi pondered for a while and made a phone call. Then, "What? Go on. Why don't you go on?" Yizan looked at Sakaguchi, who stopped talking after getting on the phone, and a strange smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Sakaguchi sat directly on the ground. "It's me." "See?" Yizan looked at the crowd and said, "A group of idiots can't see such a simple thing until now." Yizan said something, ignoring the ignorant crowd, and turned around and left. "Hey, wait, what's going on?" Officer Mew Mew asked as he looked at Yizan, who was leaving. Yizan's helpless voice came from a distance. Training dogs is divided into two stages. The first stage is the phone ringing. The second stage is the password. Only when the phone ringing and the password are combined, the dog will attack. Yizan said, leaving behind the people who suddenly realized, and left directly. Standing there, Conan stared blankly at Yizan's departure. "I am the first to solve the case." Unfortunately, Yizan couldn't hear Conan's words. Yizan had already returned home in his luxury car. After a series of things, Yizan returned to his mansion. Of course, he wanted to enjoy the leisurely days. After all, people will be tired after running around for a long time. Even if the body is not tired, the mind should relax. If you are not tired, the vehicle should rest. Well, this is just an excuse for Yizan to be lazy. Day by day. On this day, the weather was sunny and sunny. Yizan was lying on the reclining chair in the swimming pool, bathed in the fresh sunlight, and suddenly felt that the world was still very beautiful. Gudong. After taking a bite of the grapes that Suzuki Sonoko handed over, Yizan exhaled. "You have been with me for some time, and if you have the opportunity to go around the world together, I haven't even seen the scenery of this world. Look, if we go together, it will be considered a honeymoon." Quote. Well, Yizan once again found a very powerful excuse for his laziness. 18. Wearing sexy hot pants, walked out of the villa slowly. It has been a while since I came to this world, and after dealing with various things, the 18th figured out how to make others listen to his temperament. His temperament is daunting at first glance, but it is like a moth to a flame. Of approaching. 3.2 is the number 18 who has the strength to stand at the top of the world, and controls a huge consortium with one hand. Number 18 has a little more arrogance and a noble temperament. See. And this kind of temperament makes Yizan like it very much, because only this kind of temperament can have a sense of conquest, isn't it? And number 18 was also willing to be conquered by Yizan. In front of Yizan, she was still willing to be a gentle little woman, and only in front of Yizan would she show this side. On the 18th, he walked in front of Yizan, leaned on Yizan's body, stretched out his palm as soft as jade, touched Yizan's heart, and said with a smile, "I'm going to deal with some things these days. I won't be able to accompany you, you should rest well." Chapter 52_Beauties have a date. Okay. Yizan smiled and patted number 18's ass a few times. "If you have something to do, go and do it, don't worry about me, as long as you are happy." Yeah. Number 18 leaned over and kissed Yizan's face lightly, then backed away and left here. Looking at the back of number 18 leaving, Yizan's face couldn't help but show some emotional expressions. After coming to Conan World for so long, number 18 has changed a lot. The 18th enjoys the world's power, money, and everything that can be played and enjoyed. It feels too similar to Yizan. Regardless of where the 18th went, Yizan was still lying on the chair by himself, drinking orange juice, enjoying the sun and bathing. Ding ding. Suddenly, the phone next to the reclining chair rang. Yizan picked it up, and said casually, "Hey, who are you looking for?" 30 inches. Yizan, My father has a party recently, I want you to come and see it with me. A pleasant female voice sounded on the other end of the phone. As soon as he heard this voice, Yizan knew who it was. Such a voice full of heroism and tenderness was only Shaolin. The beauty had an appointment, of course Yizan would not refuse, and immediately agreed. Okay, where are you? I'll be there in a while. After agreeing on the location, Yizan didn't stay at home for long, changed into clothes, dressed up very handsomely, and left his villa soon. Yizan's financial resources in this world are guaranteed on the 18th, which is not ordinary but very strong. He just comes out of the house and drives a world-class black sports car. The roar of the engine sounded on the street. Yizan stepped on the accelerator with one foot, like a black ghost, and disappeared in place in an instant. The recent business of Mori Kogoro's detective office has not been very good. After all, without Conan's help, coupled with Yizan's troubles, Mori Kogoro's ability to solve cases as a detective without long eyes is really good. Therefore, life is still relatively embarrassing. Wearing some slightly wrinkled clothes that I didn't know where I found it, I waited for Yizan at home with Mao Lilan. Soon. Drip. Below the detective's office, a horn sounded, and it continued to ring. Mori Kogoro, who was in a bad mood, changed his face instantly, stood up from the chair, held a wine bottle in his hand, and walked towards the window carelessly, still scolding. Who is it that dares to disturb my rest? Kogoro Mori. Going out the window, Kogoro Mori saw Yizan's sports car. Yizan, sitting in the car, can be described as a handsome and elegant suit. With his short hair, he is so unrestrained. Look. It looks like a son of a wealthy family. No, not like, but just that. Yi Xuanjubai is a son of a wealthy family, or the kind of a wealthy family, except for pervert, age. Wow, it turned out to be Yizan. Mori Kogoro was instantly refreshed. Standing on the windowsill, Mori Kogoro waved to Yizan in the sports car and shouted loudly, "Hey, Yizan, long time no see, ha ha ha." Well, it's actually because Mori Kogoro discovered the relationship between Morilan and Yizan for some unknown reason, and repaired it. Mori Kogoro, who waved to say hello, showed a charming smile on his face, wishing he could run under Yizan's feet now and wipe his shoes clean for him. Yizan naturally knew who Mori Kogoro was. He also smiled, beckoned, and responded, and then said, "Mr. Mori, are you ready? Shaolin asked me to take you for a ride." Hearing this, Mori smiled even more, and quickly said, Okay, I'll come down soon." Saying that, Mori Xiaowulong immediately ran back to the room, came to Shaolin's door, kept knocking on the door, and shouted loudly, "Shaolin, come out quickly, Yizan is here to pick you up." After a while, the door was opened. Shaolan, who was wearing a long dress, showed a pair of beautiful calves and blinked a few times. "Yizan, he's here so soon, then okay, I'm going down." "Well, you go, I'll go with you soon," Mao Lilan said, quickly shouting to the next room. "Conan, are you ready? Yizan is here to pick us up, hurry up, go down." "Oh, Uncle Mori, wait a moment, I'll be ready soon." Conan's slightly immature voice came from another room. At this time, Mao Lilan's face was a little ugly, and he lowered his voice and said to Mori Xiaogoro, "Dad, why did you let him live in again?" "Ah, ha, ha ha." Mori Kogoro smirked 007, but didn't say much. In fact, the reason why Mori Kogoro let Conan live in is very simple, that is, he and Conan reached an agreement. Conan helped him solve the case, and he was responsible for using his identity in the detective agency to take some difficult cases for Conan to solve. When Maurilan was still struggling, Conan had already come out from another room, still in the same standard outfit, wearing a pair of mirror frames, wearing a small blue suit, with a pretentious look on his face. "Uncle Mori, let's go." As soon as Conan came out, he greeted Kogoro Mori. Seeing this, Shaolin could only helplessly go down with the two of them. As soon as he went there, Yizan saw Conan following the two of them, frowning slightly. This expression made Mao Lilan feel the same way. Conan took a quick step and was about to go towards the co-pilot. After all, Conan always wanted to bring Yizan to justice. Go to the back. Yizan was not polite at all. He directly mentioned Conan, ignored the little resistance, and threw Conan to the back. There is a link in the book review area of the new book, Dead Sea of Fire, with a confused face. It is a work of hard work and it is worth seeing. Chapter 53 on Izumi Hall. Sitting in the sports car, Yizan put his right hand on the window of the car, looking at the scene outside. The expression on his face gradually became relaxed, and Yizan couldn't help but glance at the beautiful women walking by the roadside. Compared with Yizan's relaxation, the remaining few people are more difficult. In fact, Kogoro Mori didn't understand the hostility between Conan and Yizan, so he still felt very strange about this atmosphere. He just thought it was because he and Conan accidentally acted as light bulbs. Mori Kogoro, who took the mistake on himself, was ready to liven up the atmosphere in the car. Wow, Yizan, your car is so beautiful. Mori Kogoro couldn't help but admire in the car. Although there is an active atmosphere, this is the real idea of Kogoro Mori. After all, the word is easy to say, but how many have actually come into contact with it? Although Mori Kogoro has been in contact with one or two, he is nothing compared to Yizan, and, most importantly, Yizan seems to have a different relationship with his daughter, which makes Mori Kogoro even more in his heart. Yizan nodded and said casually, well, I heard from number 43,318 that the cars in my garage are all the top sports cars in the world. As for this car, I don't know, but I vaguely remember that there are no more than 10 cars in the whole world. Well, invisible pretense is the most deadly. This kind of indifference to such luxurious and extravagant vehicles completely intoxicated Mori Kogoro. If he owns such a car, doesn't the sister paper want to have several? In the delusions of Kogoro Mori, everyone came to Mori Kogoro's class reunion. However, after coming to the class reunion, Yizan felt bored. Originally, I didn't have a common language with these people, and there were no women of good quality. Even if there were, there would be various problems, so. Xiaolan, let's go, let's watch the fireworks together. Yizan said to Xiaolan. It's still daytime, and the fireworks haven't started yet. Conan, the light bulb, appeared beside the two of them and said so, hoping to interrupt the development of Yizan and Xiaolan. However, before Yizan could make a sound, he saw Mori Kogoro quickly hug Conan in a lightning-fast manner, and said to the two of them, go ahead, it's all right here. Seeing this, Yizan pulled Maulilan, who was ashamed of Yuhi, and left. Under the blocking of Mori Kogoro, Conan could only stay bored at the party with a large group of adults, listening to the kind of chat that makes people sleepy. On the other hand, Yizan secretly brought Maulilan to a Wen Izumi restaurant. Let's go to Warm Izumi, Yizan said without Yuhi's breath. And Maulilan glanced at the signboard of Wen Izumi Pavilion. The big characters on the mixed bath of men and women were very eye-catching. Maulilan shy Yuhi, don't you? No one has seen Maulilan's body now. Because of Yizan, Maulilan knew Conan's identity very early on, so naturally Conan never saw his body. And now, Yizan is so blatant, is it really good? It's alright, let's go in together, Yizan said, pulling the half-pushed Maulilan into the Wen Izumi Pavilion together. Private room. It didn't take long for the boss's surprised words to come out from the Wen Izumi Pavilion. Yizan nodded, waved his hand, and the wads of coins directly made the boss agree to Yizan's request. It didn't take long for the entire Wen Izumi Pavilion to be cleared. Then, Yizan turned his eyes to the boss. What are you looking at? Are you still here? Hearing Yizan's words, the boss left Wen Izumi Pavilion without saying a word. On the spot, Maulilan looked at his toes with a shy Yuhi face. Well, you go first, Yizan said to Maulilan. In fact, Yizan's idea was to go in first, and then watch the beauty of Maulilan entering the water. Unfortunately, Maulilan's shy appearance would definitely not agree, so Yizan could only settle for the next best thing. Anyway, if you look at it secretly, it's the same. While Yizan was enjoying himself comfortably, Conan on the other side looked extremely hard. Mori Kogoro and the others, who were chatting, finally became interested in ball games for no apparent reason, and started to play, and then, "Conan, pick up the ball." When Conan heard the words, he could only suppress the complaints in his heart, and stood up again, lamenting his hard-fought fate. Compared to Conan's hard work, Yizan widened his eyes, looking at the beautiful scenery in front of him without blinking. That big white leg, that little ass, that ghost. Mao Lilan, who was ashamed of Yuhi's face, wore a large bath towel and shouted at Yizan, "Can you keep quiet when you peek?" Mao Lilan's words made Yizan wave his hand. "Well, don't worry about it, I've already seen it anyway, and I won't lose a piece of meat if I look at it more." "The devil will show you." Mao Lilan yelled ashamed Yuhi, and entered Wen Izumi directly. "Don't be so cold," Yizan said, also with a smile, and entered Wen Izumi. "Don't lean over." Mao Lilan looked at Yizan warily, and Yizan was very amused by the way he was dodging from a distance. "Okay, I won't go." Time flies. In the end, Mao Lilan still let Yizan play with him in his arms. However, the last line of defense is still there. Why? Bah! With an explosion, huge fireworks burst into the air, disturbing Mao Lilan and Yizan. The disturbed Mao Lilan resolutely stopped Yizan's hooliganism and said that he wanted to see the fireworks. "I don't know what happened to Shaolin." Mori Kogoro looked at the continuous blooming fireworks in the sky, and a strange smile cracked at the corner of his mouth, saying so. On the one hand, Conan flipped a Byakugan when he heard the words, but Conan's psychology is not the taste. And when the two have different thoughts. "I said, you have to watch some fireworks, it's not fun at all." A voice sounded, causing Mori Kogoro and Conan to turn around quickly. In the distance, Yizan was slowly approaching with Mao Lilan. Chapter 54_Dead Again. Conan looked at the hands that Yizan and Mao Lilan were holding, and felt even more unhappy in his heart. Yizan looked at Conan's unhappy appearance, a smile cracked at the corner of his mouth, and sat on the grass with Mao Lilan directly, watching the fireworks constantly blooming in the sky. That loving look is definitely an artifact of dog cruelty. And now the two around Yizan, whether it was Mori Kogoro or Conan, they were both single dogs, and the effect of abusing a dog was simply nothing. Time passed slowly while Conan was being abused. When the fireworks are nearing the end at the end, Conan said to everyone, "Okay, I'm tired, let's go back to rest." Conan's words made everyone look at each other, and finally began to pack their things one after another. It didn't take long for everyone to leave together. There was nothing to say all the way. In the process of Yizan and Mao Lilan showing their affection, everyone returned to the meeting place of everyone. After everyone returned to the place where they lived, Yizan and Mao Lilan sat on the same chair. The loving look really made everyone feel a little uncomfortable. After all, everyone present was alone, and only Yizan and Mao Lilan showed their love all the time. "Ah, where's Yumi?" Conan glanced around, but found the woman who hadn't come yet. "Is he still sleeping?" In the speculation of everyone went to the room where Yumi slept together. Then, with a scream, everyone finally discovered the dead Yumi. Behind everyone, Yizan quietly hugged Mao Lilan, who was a little scared, and looked at Yumi who was hung high on the beam. Because of Yizan's appearance, Yumi, who should have been shot, ended up being hanged. When everyone is in shock. "It's you, right, it's you who did it." Conan looked at Yizan instantly and said loudly. Conan's words made everyone look at Yizan, and a whispering voice came. "Yeah, he's never been with us. And left for so long halfway through. But, this is hanging, could it be suicide?" "It's also possible, but I still feel that murder is more likely. After all, who would choose such a painful way to die?" The people who were talking about it made Mao Lilan instantly explode. No, I have always been with Yizan, he definitely didn't kill him. As Morilan said, a trace of disgust for Conan rose in his heart. As the daughter of a detective and a lawyer, Mao Lilan has always disliked others who don't know anything, and arbitrarily hand down judgments. This is also the reason why Mao Lilan has a different feeling for Yizan, because Mao Lilan himself has accidentally become the object that Mao Lilan hates the most. And now Conan definitely belongs to the situation where he doesn't know anything and makes a judgment at will. With Mao Lilan's words, Yizan waved his hand and looked at Conan. As always, you still speculate on the case with your insufficient head, and then arbitrarily use your guess as the final conclusion. Yizan looked at Conan and said, "Forget it, let me teach you how to be a qualified detective." Yizan said and stepped out. But Conan quickly shouted at Yizan, "No need. I can definitely do it." Conan said, ran to the scene of the crime on his own, and began to investigate. Mao Lilan glanced at Yizan and said, "Aren't you going?" Yizan looked at Mao Lilan's somewhat frightened eyes, and shook his head slightly. "No, let's go and rest together. It is estimated that this kind of detective wants to find out the truth of the case. It will take a long time. Let's go play for a while." Following Yizan's words, Mao Lilan nodded, returned to the hall with Yizan, and began to enjoy life. Comfortable. Yizan narrowed his eyes, took a sip of his tea, and let out a long sigh of relief, suddenly realizing that this is not bad. Follow Conan yourself, and then let Conan solve the case as a coolie, watch the fate run by yourself, and take advantage of the fisherman. Time passed slowly. Yizan and Mao Lilan both watched Conan busy running around. After waiting for a while, Conan came to Yizan and yelled at Yizan, "I've cracked it." Yizan held Mao Lilan in one hand and nibbled the apple casually in the other. From the flow of fate, Yizan already knew that Conan had succeeded in solving the case. "Who is the murderer?" Yizan asked while looking at Conan. "Hokage." Conan looked at Yizan and said, "It's that policeman." "Oh, you guessed it right," Yizan said in mock surprise. "I didn't guess it." Conan yelled at Yizan, "I'm a detective, a detective. Understand? I cracked it." Yizan nodded and waved his hand casually and said, I know. Mao Lilan said to Conan, "Have you told anyone about this?" Conan was taken aback by Morilan's words, and then he went to tell Mori Kogoro and the others. But Conan didn't realize that his behavior in front of Yizan just now was too much like a child showing off toys to adults. "Is it really Hokage?" Mao Lilan looked at Yizan and asked. "Well," Yizan nodded, looked at the curious Mao Lilan and said, "Since you want to see it, let's go and see what's going on." Yizan said, pulled Mao Lilan, and came to the scene of the crime together. At the crime scene, Conan and Mori Kogoro jointly explained the murderer's modus operandi. On the other hand, Yizan pulled Mao Lilan into the room, just in time to hear the explanation of the two. And as the two explained, the surprise in Mao Lilan's heart became stronger and stronger. In such a complicated case, Yizan knew the murderer just after a face-to-face meeting. If Mao Lilan didn't know about it, Mao Lilan would really think that Yizan himself instructed others to do it. With the revelation of the final case, the murderer is naturally also abusive. "Okay, since we know the truth, let's go back," Yizan whispered to Mao Lilan. Although Yizan was not afraid of the dead, staying by the side of a dead person would affect his mood after all. Chapter 55_Watch Movie. It had been a while since the case had passed. During this period of time, the relationship between Yizan and Maurilan had heated up rapidly with the acquiescence and help of Mori Kogoro. Yizan woke up as late as always. Although he came to Mao Lilan's house as soon as he woke up, it was already close to the afternoon. As for why Yizan came to find Mao Lilan, the reason is actually very simple, to ask Mao Lilan to go to the movies. Yizan drove a luxury car and wandered around for a long time before he remembered a very embarrassing thing. That is, Yizan didn't know where the movie theater was, not to mention the movie tickets that should have been booked in advance. Last night, Yizan only cared about having sex with number 18 and Suzuki Sonoko, and forgot about buying movie tickets. In desperation, Yizan could only look at Mao Lilan and said, "By the way, Xiaolan, where are we going to watch a movie?" Xiaolan had already anticipated Yizan's behavior, took out a few movie tickets that she had already bought, and said with a smile, "Go to the silver seat, this movie premieres tonight, of course to the best place to watch." Ah. Okay. Seeing this, Yizan was also extremely satisfied, smiled slightly, stepped on the accelerator, and took Xiaolan to the most prosperous silver seat. Yizan's sports car was very fast. On the street, he didn't pay attention to the violation of regulations. In less than a while, he had reached the silver seat, the most prosperous area in Tokyo. After parking the car, Yizan and Mao Lilan walked to the nearest cinema to watch a movie here. Silver Tower is indeed the most prosperous area. There are many people coming and going, especially when it is approaching at night. There are countless people who come here to shop. When they came to the door of the cinema, Yizan and the two were about to go in, when suddenly a figure came running from a distance and shouted, "Xiaolan, wait for me, wait for me." Hearing this voice, Yizan and Mao Lilan both turned their heads, and saw Mori Kogoro and Conan, who had put on new clothes, running quickly from a distance. It seemed that he had been chasing Yizan for a long time, and Mori Kogoro ran out of breath. When he came to the front of several people, he covered his heart and let out a few heavy breaths. After a while, Mori Kogoro said, "Oh, no, I'm getting old, and I can't breathe after running for a while." Xiaolan looked at Mori Kogoro suspiciously. "Dad, why are you here? Aren't you watching TV at home?" Putting up his hands, Mori Kogoro stood up and said, "It's boring to be alone at home, can't Dad come out and watch a movie with you?" Then he turned around. Mori Kogoro scratched his head again, and said with a smile, "Ha ha, young Master Yizan, you don't mind if I watch a movie with you?" Well, although Yizan really doesn't want to follow these two extra-large light bulbs in his heart, the future old husband's words will still be very effective. At least Yizan will use the future old husband to bring the former rival. There is no way to watch a movie together. Shrugging slightly, Yizan nodded and said, "I don't mind, then let's go together." Looking at the time, Yizan continued, "It's almost time, you guys go first, I'll go buy 2 more movie tickets." "I'll go with you." Mao Lilan quickly followed Yizan. "Dad is real, too," Mao Lilan said with a pout. Yizan looked at Mao Lilan's lovely lips. "Come on. Okay, next time we are together," Yizan said to Mao Lilan. "That's the only way." Xiaolan nodded, and after buying 2 movie tickets again, she went in together. A movie lasted for more than 2 hours. After Yizan and the others watched the movie, it was already dark, and the outside of the movie theater was already green. Yizan and the others came out of the cinema and felt a little hungry. Xiaolan glanced at a gourmet restaurant under the silver seat and said involuntarily, "The food there looks very good, it should be delicious." As soon as he finished speaking, Mori Kogoro hurriedly continued, "What are you talking about? If you go there for a meal, it will be very painful when you pay for it." Afterwards, Mori Kogoro turned his head again, looked at Yizan and said with a smile, "Of course, this amount of money is nothing to young Master Yizan." Of course Yizan knew what Mori Kogoro was thinking. He smiled involuntarily, nodded and said, "Since everyone is a little hungry, let's go there and eat something, I invite everyone." Knowing that Yizan was going to treat her again this time, Xiaolan waved her hand a little embarrassedly and said, "How about that? Let us pay this time." Hearing that he was going to pay, Mori Kogoro's face darkened immediately, and he quickly said, "Xiaolan, how could you refuse the kindness of young Master Yizan? It's too naive." In the end, under the persuasion of Kogoro Mori, Xiaolan and Conan went to the gourmet restaurant over there with Yizan. Before the group entered the gourmet shop, they saw a man with a shiny face, patted his chubby belly, and walked out of the shop, followed by 2 bodyguards. "Oh, the food here is really good, I have to eat here next time, hee hee." The middle-aged man laughed and hiccuped before walking towards the Mercedes-Benz on the side of the road. When this man passed by Yizan and the others, he accidentally dropped a leather bag, but the people behind him didn't see it, and instead kept walking towards Ben 0.6. The sharp-eyed Conan saw this, and quickly stopped the middle-aged man. "Uncle, your things have fallen." As soon as the middle-aged man turned his head, he saw the purse that had fallen on the ground. He immediately reacted and shouted to the bodyguard beside him with some displeasure, "Come and pick it up soon." Then the middle-aged man smiled and said to Conan, "My little friend, thank you for this battle. If you want anything, just tell your uncle, I can satisfy you." Mori Kogoro, who was next to him, recognized the middle-aged man without waiting for Conan to speak. He couldn't help showing some surprise on his face, and quickly said, "Isn't that the president of the Jumu group?" "He is." Chapter 56_President dies. After speaking, Mori Kogoro hurriedly walked over, stretched out his hand and shook it, and said with a smile, "It's the president of the giant screen group. I'm Mori Kogoro, a detective. You don't have to thank this child. If in the future, if there is anything that needs my help, just come to me." Quote. Mori Kogoro also found a business card from his body and handed it to the president of the giant screen group. "Okay, I remember you, Kogoro Mori." After all, Conan helped himself, and the president of the giant screen group would not refuse Mori's business card. He took it with a smile, and then hiccups, and everyone he greeted him and said, "I still have something to do, so I'll go back first." The young driver who had been waiting to drive beside him heard the name of Kogoro Mori. His expression changed, but he quickly recovered and said to the president of Jumu Group, "President, Che, it's already here, please get in the car." Seeing this young driver, the president of Jumu Group seemed very unhappy and shouted to him, "Ren, you bastard, why did you come here so slowly? Do you know that I have been waiting for you for 30 years? In front of so many people, this young driver named Shiren was scolded so badly by the president of the Jumu Group, and his face was naturally ugly, but after a while, Shiren returned to his calm appearance and nodded. Said, "I'm sorry, President, it was my fault." When Shiren was talking, Yizan noticed that his face was a little different, but he didn't pay attention to it that much. It wasn't a big deal anyway. Seeing his subordinate admit his mistake, the president of the giant screen group felt very satisfied, so he raised his head, took his bodyguard, and walked towards the Mercedes-Benz. Seeing the president of Jumu Group drive away from here, Maoli couldn't help but sighed. Alas, the life of the rich is different. They can reprimand their subordinates however they want, and no one dares to reprimand them. Take care. Yizan smiled lightly and said, "Let's not feel sorry for others, let's go eat our own food." When it comes to eating, Maori regained his energy, and hurried to the front of the crowd, laughing with his head. It was also his honor to come to such a high-end place to eat. After the group happily finished their dinner here, Yizan drove the car and sent Mori Kogoro and the others to their home safely. Yizan himself drove the car and returned to the villa. In this luxurious villa, if he didn't come back on the 18th, only Jack was free in it. After washing up, Yizan went back to the bedroom and checked the situation of the killer organization. Over the past period of time, the reputation of their organization has become a well-known hot spot in the entire dark world. Very powerful. This is why Yizan consumes the money. Otherwise, any consortium or organization will fail in this money-burning expansion. But Yizan is different. He wants to get money, but it is easy, but he is enjoying a process, the process of master power. After sleeping peacefully for a night, Yizan just woke up the next day when he received a call from Kogoro Mori. "Ah, young Master Yizan, the big thing is bad. The president of Jumu Group has died. Officer Mumu called me and asked me to come over," Mori Kogoro said excitedly over the phone. The president of the giant screen group. Yizan thought about it before he remembered. Isn't this the man he met last night? He didn't expect to die today. When such a case happened, for Yizan, it was just to see the fate of the game, which was also the reason why he chose this low martial arts world. After all, once the martial power has reached the top, all that remains is to return to the basics. Yizan is now in such a state, and the bizarre cases in the world of Conan are exactly the places worthy of his cultivation. After making the decision, Yizan said, "You wait for me at home, I will come over soon." Okay, I'll wait for you at home," Maori said quickly on the phone. After a while, Yizan drove the car and came to the detective office of Maori Kogoro. As soon as he entered the door, he found that Maori and Shaolin were waiting for him there. Seeing Yizan coming, Shaolin also stood up a little excited and said quickly, "Yizan, you are finally here. Officer Miu Miu has made several calls and asked my father to go to the scene." Yizan waved his hand to signal Shaolin not to get excited, and then said, "Don't worry, since the case is here, let's go over and take a look." With Yizan here, everyone seemed to have a backbone, and they all became calmer. On the other hand, Conan, who was next to him, looked a little heavy. He glanced at Mori and said, "I think this incident is probably related to that driver." Tisk tisk, although the Son of Destiny has been transferred several times, it is Conan after all, so he is aware of this, but he has not yet arrived at the scene, and Yizan is not easy to make too many judgments. "I'm not sure about this yet. I'd better go to Officer 253 of the Mumu Police first and see what he has to say," Yizan said to the crowd. "Well, I also agree with Brother Yizan's suggestion." Conan nodded. "What children do when they talk so much, let's just listen to young Master Yizan," Maori Kogoro said with a charming smile. At this critical moment, Maori Kogoro is just like this. Soon, Yizan and the others received a call from Police Officer Miu Miu. Yizan agreed with a roar, and drove the car with Maori and a few people to the villa of the president of Jumu Group. The crime scene this time was at the house of the president of the Jumu Group. Yizan and the others had just arrived at the gate of the villa and were about to enter when a young man ran over from a distance and ran in front of Yizan and the others. "Let me go." As soon as the young man passed in front of them, he ran to the gate of the villa, and pressed his hand on the sensor at the door. The gate beeped twice, and then the door was opened. Seeing that this door is so advanced, Maori said in surprise, "Wow, this door is really powerful," and it opened it by himself. The new book, A Sea of Dead Flames with a Confused Face, there is a link in the book review area, it is really beautiful. Chapter 57 _ It's Murder. In this world, the development of science and technology is not so mature. Compared with the Dragon Ball world, it must be much worse. Not only Maori, but also Shaolin and Conan were a little surprised, especially Conan, who seemed to recognize the young man, pointed at him and said, "Aren't you the subordinate of the president of the Giant Screen Group?" The young man glanced at Conan in surprise, then said, "I'm the president's secretary, who are you?" Obviously, one night later, the young secretary had forgotten Yizan and the others, and when he saw them, he seemed a little puzzled. With an indifferent smile, Yizan walked up to the young secretary and said to him, "Did you forget that you helped your president carry your bag last night, and we met under the silver seat?" After being reminded, the young man remembered, patted his forehead, and then said in surprise, "So it's you, by the way, what are you doing here?" "We are detectives. Officer Mumu invited us here to help you find the cause of death," Yizan said. After all, the president of the Giant Screen Group was fine yesterday, but after just one night, he suddenly died suddenly. Anyone who thinks about this kind of thing will feel a little weird. Hearing what Yizan said, the young secretary hurriedly said, "So that's the case, then come in with me quickly, Officer Mumu has been waiting for a long time." Soon, under the leadership of the young secretary, Yizan and the others walked into the villa. As soon as he entered the villa, Yizan found out that the security measures here are very strong. Although there are not many bodyguards, there are some high-tech inside, relying on the latest computer control system to maintain this villa. Maori Kogoro naturally tutted his tongue beside him, and was amazed at such a technological thing, he had never seen it before. After arriving at the scene, Officer Mumu, who was investigating the body, also found Yizan and the others, and hurried over to say hello. Yizan glanced at the corpse on the bed, and then asked, "Has the cause of death been found out?" The one lying on the bed was the president of the giant screen group that he met last night. At this time, he was already a corpse, lying motionless on the bed, as if he had fallen asleep. After preliminary judgment, it should have been a heart attack and then died. Officer Mumu replied. Heart attack. Yizan also sighed with emotion. Such a result was naturally within his expectation. The perpetrator of this murder case was very clever, and most people really couldn't tell what kind of drug he used. Method. Conan walked to the bed, touched the back of the deceased with his hand, and said in surprise, "Why is there so much sweat on the back of the deceased?" Seeing Conan running to touch the corpse, Mori Kogoro had a seizure on the spot, and quickly pulled Conan aside and said loudly, "What the hell are you doing? How can you touch it and disturb the evidence?" When Conan heard this, he couldn't refute it, so he nodded obediently and stood aside. After a while, Maori came over and said to the police officer Mumu, "I guess, the death of the president of the giant screen group should be caused by the temperature change of the air conditioner." Officer Mumu nodded. "So that's how it is." Yizan heard the conversation between the two, and it was a Byakugan who said directly, "This is a murder case. The president of the giant screen group should have been premeditated by his own people before he was killed." As soon as these words came out, everyone present was very surprised and looked at Yizan in disbelief. But Yizan's eyes, like a knife, swept through everyone present. The subordinates and servants of the president of the giant screen group all felt hot on their faces, and they couldn't express their opinions if they wanted to speak. Finally, the sweaty secretary spoke up and said, "Your speculation like this is too hasty. The president is very good to us. Everyone respects the president very much. How could you kill him?" Quote. Really? Yizan raised the corner of his mouth slightly, then pointed to Shiren who was teasing the dog outside, and said solemnly, "What about him? I think your president is not very good to him." Yizan still remembers that last night, this young man named Ven Ren was severely lectured by their president, but he lost all face in front of so many people. Unexpectedly, the young secretary shook his head and retorted, "Yizan, it was even more impossible to kill the president at that time. You don't know how good the president is to him. At that time, this guy worked well in the company, and then he resigned from the company and started a software company outside with a few friends, but not long after, the company went bankrupt. I came back and asked the president to take him in. The president remembered his old love, so he took him in. With such a big favor, how could he have killed the president?" The young secretary said in disbelief. After hearing these words, Yizan directly turned to Byakugan. "If your president really wants to help Shiren, you won't make Shiren embarrassed in front of so many people, and let Shiren be his driver. Can't see it so obvious. This is obviously to let other employees know the consequences and fate of leaving the company." After so much speculation, Conan on one side has already made a preliminary conclusion in his heart that Ren was the most suspected target in this case, making strict speculations. Everything in the room, Conan is carefully checking, including every corner. This is Conan's style, more careful with a case than he is with anything. In the end, Conan also targeted Mr. Ren, and Conan absolutely doubted that it had something to do with Ren, who knew how to use computers. So, after Shiren walked in, Conan used the laser needle in his hand to stun Mori and let him sit staggeringly on the sofa. Yizan, who had never seen Conan's behavior before, was very interested when he saw it. Chapter 58-Cheating and Murder. After Conan did all this, he hid himself behind the sofa and began to speak with a voice changer imitating Kogoro Mori's voice. Although Conan did all this carefully, Yizan could see clearly, as long as there was something in this room, nothing could escape his observation. "Ahem, Mr. Ren, you're back, can you all be quiet and listen to me?" Conan, who used a voice changer, said from behind Mori. Everyone heard this, and then looked towards this side in surprise. Officer Mumu even asked, "Brother Maori, have you found the murderer?" "That's right, the real murderer is right in front of us." Conan continued to speak with a voice changer. Yizan also listened with interest, and Kwandang was watching the play. Everyone was waiting for the result, and when Ren just entered the door, his expression changed drastically. Conan, who was hiding behind Maori, did not hesitate, and said in a deep voice, "The real murderer is Mr. Shiren. I wonder if I guessed wrong, Shiren." Ah, what? When he was accused of being the murderer, Shiren's expression changed suddenly, his body couldn't help but back up several steps, and fell to the ground at 010 o'clock. However, Shiren soon regained his calm, with a smile on his face, and said aside, "You made such a hasty decision to testify against me as the murderer without any evidence. It would be too much. If you want evidence, then I'll give it to you," said Conan, who was hiding behind Mori. "You originally had your own ambitions and wanted to leave the company and develop a software company by yourself, but then failed. After you returned to the company, the president humiliated you in every possible way and made you his driver. You hold a grudge, that's your motive," Conan said from behind the sofa. Shiren's expression twitched a few times, but he still refused to admit it, and said excitedly, "Even if you say this, but the evidence, if you can't find the evidence, you can't prove it. I'm the murderer. The evidence is in your home. If you want to kill the president of the giant screen group, you must be a person who understands computers very well. I believe that in your home, there must be software to control the computer here. In addition to you, there are also can anyone do this," Conan continued. Ah, Shiren stepped back several steps in a row, sat down on the chair, and then said, "You're right, the murderer is me. I thought it was flawless, but I didn't expect it to be discovered. I'm really ashamed," Shiren said with some disappointment. Unexpectedly, in a seemingly difficult case, the murderer was found so quickly, and everyone's heart was full of emotion. However, Yizan, who didn't speak beside him, found a small trace after Shiren sat down. That is, when he was covering his face, the corners of his mouth inadvertently showed some smiles. Being found out as the murderer, Ren was not only not sad, but also admitted that he was the murderer. With such a smile on his mouth, it was really weird. Could it be? A thought suddenly flashed through Yizan's mind. In the eyes of everyone, the truth has been revealed, and the police officer Mumu has also instructed the police officers next to him to prepare to arrest the then Ren. Is this your final result? So sorry, it seems that you were wrong, Yizan said suddenly. What? Everyone was even more astonished, and turned their eyes to Yizan's side. The murderer admitted himself, but Yizan suddenly wanted to refute. Officer Miu Miu even spread his hands and said to Yizan, "Mr. Yizan, then Ren has already admitted that he is the murderer. How can there be other truths about the case?" Not only Miu Miu, but Conan, who was hiding behind the sofa, had a very ugly face. Of course he knew Yizan's ability. Did he really guess wrong? Yizan smiled lightly, walked in front of Shiren, and said, "Although on the surface, the murderer is Shiren, and this case was indeed done by him, but behind him, there should be some instructions. Him." As soon as he heard this, Shiren, who was handcuffed, suddenly became crazy and said excitedly, "No, I killed the president alone, and it has nothing to do with others." The more excited he showed, the more he showed that there was a ghost in his heart. His performance at that time made Yizan more certain that there was at least one other person behind him who participated in this murder. The corner of his mouth raised slightly, Yizan said, "I have a very puzzling question. If you want to enter the president's house to complete this operation, you must at least have someone who is familiar with the president's house to help. You can complete all this, and if you can move here without being noticed by the bodyguards, I think there should be no one except the president's family." Having said this, Yizan glanced at the photos on the wall again, and said, "It's very strange that when you were about to start these 2 days, the president's wife and son went on a trip again, don't you? Do you think this is strange? Also, the president's wife is still so young. He is the president's second wife, and it's really rare to be so kind to other people's sons." Yizan smiled indifferently and continued, "I just asked the president's secretary. His wife seems to be familiar with you before." Speaking of this, Then Ren's expression was extremely ugly, but he still said, "What nonsense are you talking about? I don't know the president's wife, I did the whole thing alone." Alas. Yizan sighed slightly, and then said, "The more you are like this, the more you reveal your guilty conscience. If I guessed right, there should be a photo of the president's wife in your pocket." Bar. Saying that, Yizan walked over to Shiren's side, but before he got to him, Shiren twisted his body frantically, as if he wanted to resist Yizan. But he was already under control. How could he resist? Yizan walked to Shiren, reached out and took it out in his pocket, then took out a small wallet, opened it, and put it in the outermost one. Layer is a photo. It was the photo of Ren and the president's wife hugging each other, and the two seemed very close. Chapter 59 pled guilty. Seeing the photo slide down, Shiren's expression changed immediately, as if someone had exposed the conspiracy, and his face was as pale as a blank sheet of paper. No. With a low growl, Shiren wanted to break free from the restraints of the two policemen and went to pick up the photo. But there was no chance for him to pick up the photos. The two policemen next to him restrained him so tightly that he couldn't move at all. This dropped photo quickly attracted everyone's attention. Officer Mumu said to an assistant next to him, "Go and bring that photo here." Yes. The assistant nodded, walked over quickly, and took the photo. After seeing the photo, Officer Mumu handed it to Yizan and asked worriedly, "Is that what you are talking about? She is the mastermind behind the case." Holding the photo in his hand and looking at it, Yizan nodded slightly. "Yes, this woman is the black hand behind her." Yizan walked in front of Shiren, shook the photo, and said indifferently, "You and the wife of the president of Jumu Group should have an affair, otherwise, you wouldn't kill her for her sake." President of the Giant Screen Group. Quote. "No, there's no such thing, I'm just friends with her." At this juncture, Shiren still wanted to deny everything, and he didn't want all his secrets to be discovered. "Hee, do you think they'll believe it?" Yizan sneered, tore the photo in half, and threw it on the ground, saying indifferently, "It's a pity that you're too careless, and you even put all the evidence of this crime on the ground. Bring it with you." Having said that, Yizan reached out and touched Shiren's body, took out a mobile phone, turned on the dial button on it, and dialed back directly according to a number he dialed before. Seeing Yizan calling back, then Ren's face became even more ugly, struggling to rush to Yizan's side, but unfortunately he was controlled, and there was no chance to resist. After a while, the call was connected, and a coquettish female voice came from the mobile phone. "Hey, Shiren, has that old guy been killed by you?" Just this sentence shocked everyone. I didn't expect Yizan's speculation to be right. Behind Shiren, there was a woman who was controlling everything, and everything was under his control. Without hearing anyone speak, the woman seemed suspicious, and then said with some worry, "Hey, Shiren, what's the matter, are you talking?" Yizan didn't reply a word, just hung up the phone, then stared at Shiren and said, "What do you have to say now?" The matter has reached this stage, and Shiren has no meaning to hide anymore. With a wry smile on his face, weakly slumped to the ground, his hands resting on the ground, and said with some pain, "I didn't expect it to fail in the end." "Yes, you said yes, it's all just a plan." Under Yizan's inference, then Ren Zai's last defense had been opened, and all the facts were explained. It turned out that he and the wife of the president of the Giant Screen Group had known each other for a long time. At that time, he worked hard to make money for the president's wife, but he didn't expect it to collapse in the end. What made Shiren even more painful was that the president took away his beloved woman, and since then, Shiren was even more depressed. In order to fully retaliate against the president, Shiren hid by his side, and soon after, he also discovered that the person he loved back then still loved him. So, after the two discussed it for a while, a bold idea emerged, and the two planned a murder. When the president dies, the president's wife will inherit all the property logically, and the two of them will be able to escape and live a very happy life. After learning about all the incidents, everyone sighed deeply. When this happened, I really don't know whether to be angry or sympathetic. Shaolin, who was next to her, changed her eyes a few times and covered her mouth. I don't know if it was because of excitement or some emotion. But Conan was shocked. He never thought that his inference would be wrong. The real murderer was more than one person at all. Oh, Yizan's inference ability is really amazing. Even a famous detective like me admires it very much. Mori Kogoro suddenly appeared and flattered Yizan. However, Yizan did not take his words seriously, continued to look at Shishi, and said to him, "Tell me, the president's wife, where are you now?" When Ren's lips were tightly closed, he refused to say a word, as if he didn't want to betray the woman he loved, and he didn't want her to be caught. Jack glanced at him indifferently and said in a low voice, "If you don't say anything, then she will be caught by the police, and she will be punished more severely. You don't always think that he can be surrounded by the police. Get out of this city." Shiren was also a man with a brain, otherwise, he would not have designed such a secret case to kill the president. At the same time, he also knew that it was impossible for his beloved woman to escape from this city. It was too dangerous here. The police could capture her within a few hours. Knowing that he was powerless, Shiren sighed heavily and said in an extremely low tone, "She is in the Mary Hotel next door, room 888, but I don't know if she has escaped now." After getting the result, Officer Mumu didn't hesitate, and quickly said to the police officers behind him, "Come on, go to the Mary Hotel to arrest someone." Under the orders of Officer Mumu, several policemen quickly ran out and rushed to the Mary Hotel next door. About a few minutes later, Officer Mumu received a call, reporting that the suspect had been arrested and brought over by them. After everything was clear, Officer Mumu also breathed a sigh of relief, walked to Yizan's side, stretched out his hand, and said with a smile, "Thank you so much." Chapter 60 _ The situation of the garden. After the case was solved, Officer Mumu smiled and stretched out his hand in order to express his gratitude to Yizan. "Yizan, I don't know if you have time. I would like to invite you to dinner tonight and discuss with you how to analyze the case." Quote. Maoli also smiled and said, "Yes, Yizan's detection ability is so strong, why don't you take me with you and let me learn?" Slight smile, Yizan said, "I still have something to do today. I'm afraid I can't accompany you. Next time I invite you to have a big meal, how about it?" Although a little disappointed, Yizan has something to do, and everyone can't force anything. Police Officer Mumu also said regretfully, "Well, next time Yizan will have to show his face." All the credit for this case was attributed to Yizan, which made Conan feel very uncomfortable, and his reasoning was overturned by Yizan. For a famous detective, his name Kudo Shinichi has long been known all over the country, but he did not expect to be defeated by Yizan today. "Damn, I must surpass you next time," Conan said secretly in his heart. On the surface, he looks like a child, but with the heart of an adult, he never wants to admit defeat, especially in front of Yizan. Conan can also feel that Maolilan seems to be getting farther and farther away from him, and to Yizan. Zan also became more and more interested, which for him was a great sense of threat. Who is Yizan? He has already noticed Conan's dissatisfaction with him, and he glanced at Conan with a slight glance. The corners of his mouth raised slightly, Yizan showed a smile, walked towards Conan, reached out and stroked his face, and said with a smile, "Conan is really a smart kid, the reasoning just now was almost guessed by you." When talking, Yizan couldn't help but increase his strength, pinched his fingers on Conan's face a few times, and used some strength slightly, which made Conan's expression very strange. "Hee, no matter how smart you are, there is still a gap compared to you." Conan looked up at Yizan with a slightly dissatisfied tone. But Yizan doesn't care so much. The purpose of his coming to this world is to further exercise his strength. Letting go, Yizan greeted everyone, picked up his long gown, turned to Officer Mumu and said, "I'll go back first, please send Mr. Maori and Shaolin back to the officer." Some chubby police officers, with their stomachs pushed forward, blew their beards, and replied, "No problem, if you have anything to do, just go and do it first, and you can leave it to me here." Okay. With an indifferent smile, Yizan walked towards the gate. This time, the case made him feel that his spiritual comprehension was a step further. Seeing that Yizan was leaving, Maori Koburo hurriedly chased after him a little excitedly, and shouted from behind, "Yizan, can you take us with you?" But just after he finished speaking, Shaolin kicked him vigorously from behind, and said with some dissatisfaction, "Everyone has left, what are you shouting here?" After leaving the villa of the president of the giant screen group, Yizan took out his car and hurried back to his home. Just received Sonoko's message, she seems to be in a little trouble. The accelerator of the sports car that was stepped directly, the open-top sports car, left a puff of black smoke in place, and then disappeared on the side of the road. Returning to his villa, Yizan opened the door and walked inside. There was a garden behind, which was Yizan's secret base. Except for him, ordinary people could not easily come to this place. Coming to the garden, Yizan glanced around and determined the location of Suzuki Yuanzi. Although her breath was very weak, she could not avoid Yizan's consciousness. Walking in the direction where Yuanzi was, Yizan said softly, "Yuanzi, come out, I'm back." Soon, from behind a big tree at the back of the garden, a faint white light, wrapped in a woman, slowly floated out. Her feet did not touch the ground, just suspended in the air. This woman is none other than Sonoko. At this time, she looks very different from before, and seems to be seriously injured. "Yuanzi, what's wrong with you?" Yizan was the first to see such a garden, and the expression on his face couldn't help but be surprised. Yuanzi, whose face was pale, looked up at Yizan before saying, "I encountered a monster that almost killed me. You must save me, Yizan." "What?" Yizan was slightly surprised. He didn't expect that there would be monsters in this world. You must know that this is the world of Conan. Monsters should not exist at all. After being surprised, Yizan's face showed some anger and said, "Tell me who and where, and I will help you kill him right away." For Yizan, there are basically no monsters in this world that can resist him. As long as he makes a casual move, he can solve what Yuanzi said. But Sonoko didn't speak, just kept shaking his head, as if he was still very afraid of the so-called monster and didn't dare to say it. The light in his eyes was getting weaker and weaker. Sonoko said weakly to Yizan, "This time I'm very hurt, I need to rest for a while, 1.2 can't accompany you anymore." After finishing speaking, Yuanzi's whole body flashed brightly, and the entire figure quickly disappeared, as if it had never appeared before, turning into a small ball and falling into Yizan's hands. Looking at the white sphere in his hand, there was some energy in it changing faintly, and Yizan knew that this was all in the garden. Holding the ball in his hand tightly, Yizan took a deep breath and said, "Don't worry, as long as I'm here, I won't let you have any trouble." Soon, Yizan returned to his room, found an exquisite box, carefully placed the beads of Yuanzi's incarnation in it, and placed it on himself to prevent it from being lost.